useless. It is the life of pride, dignity, and victory. The green flag flying and hoisted. You, the youth, be comfortable at any place, in the streets, squares, dance, sing, stay up all night, live a life of dignity with high morals. Muammar al-Qaddafi is one of you. Dance and sing, joy and rejoice.
Muammar Gaddafi is one of you as he blows kisses to the apparently adoring throng in Tripoli in Green Square. A surprise appearance about half an hour ago, I'd say it was, that Muammar Gaddafi appeared among those crowds. Tariq Yusuf in the studio with me watching. There's two things we've got to deal with: the content of the speech and the speech itself, and all the possible variables. As I said, these pictures were apparently half an hour ago, around 7 o'clock, just before 7 p.m. Lots of questions now about, is that what 7 p.m. looks like in Libya? He's wearing very, very warm clothes. Is it that cold? Basically, we're asking, is this real?
Yeah.
And what do you think?
I'm sort of torn between wanting to see this as a legitimate speech with legitimate crowds that still cling on to the man that they've known all their life and willing to fight for to the last moment. But I'm also aware of the phenomenal capabilities of Libya's propaganda machine to repackage, reproduce, and recreate reality. And so I want to wait. I want to see what the analysts who take a look at the footage can tell us by looking back at other.
The location's all familiar to you, though. This is definitely
absolutely, absolutely. The location is familiar, but he's not spoken to the crowds ever, to my knowledge, from behind a wall. The crowds don't strike me as the typical faces of Libyans that you would see. You would see a lot of familiar sort of looks from Tripoli and elsewhere. You're seeing a lot of representation from the south of Libya, possibly, Tuaregs, people from even further south from Sebha. That is not the average scene from Green Square. The crowds are much smaller than what you would normally expect. And we have to sort of take that against the backdrop of news we received earlier in footage from Tripoli, that there were protests in other parts of the city. How did this come about? How come no one knew of it? But more importantly, the question of the significance of the speech at the moment, and what does it tell us?
And Tariq, we will deal with that in just one moment. I want to just mark 1/2 the hour on AlJazeera, 17:30 GMT for anyone joining us right now. The main developments from this day of protest around the Middle East, they focus on Libya because, as we've just been saying with Tariq Yusuf, Muammar Gaddafi has made a surprise appearance in front of his supporters in Tripoli's Green Square. He told them, we can open the arms stocks to all Libyans, and at that time, everything will be red. Earlier, his troops and militia had opened fire on protesters elsewhere in Tripoli.
Be prepared to defend Libya, to defend the Great River, to defend the oil, your dignity, independence, glory, and pride. Let them feel the shame. Let them feel the embarrassment. I'm here among you, among the public in the Green Square. And here you are, the youth of Libya, the children and grandchildren of martyrs of the Battle of Jihad, who crushed the Italian invasion. The Italian Empire was smashed by your forefathers. We are able to crush any foreign aggression by people's will, by the armed people. When necessary, weapon depot will be opened. Every Libyan individual and every Libyan tribe will be armed. So Libya will turn into a burning hell.
Tariq Yusuf, let's discuss some of the content there. I say content, it's difficult because his speeches are quite rambling. They go off on interesting tangents, shall we say. The overall theme, though, is defiance once again. Don't mess with me.
Absolutely. Second theme is it's all directed at nothing that has to do with the facts on the ground that he addressed in the previous speech just a couple of days ago. He didn't talk about the Benghazi. He didn't talk about the eastern part. He didn't talk about the lawlessness. He didn't talk about liberated cities. He didn't talk about what he described to be the rats and the cats, the hallucinators, the drug addicts. This is a speech essentially designed to mobilize public opinion against foreign interests, foreign designs, foreign imperialists, and foreign intervention in the country, as if that is actually the question. I think that suggests to me, at least, that he can no longer deny the facts on the ground, because even his children have started admitting now that, yes, the eastern part of the country and some parts of the West are completely beyond the control of the regime. So maybe now it's time to repackage the propaganda and reclaim the mantle from everyone else and say, well, this is the new Libya. It's anti-imperialist, it's anti-Western world. I'm struck by his mention of Italy. Silvio Berlusconi and the government of Italy is probably the closest friends to Gaddafi's rule and the ones who stood by him until the very last minute. The fact that he's choosing this anti-Italian colonial rhetoric at this moment is a bit perplexing.
One thing you can never predict, what is going to come out of his mouth, can you? Tariq Youssef with some very interesting thoughts there on a very interesting speech we saw from the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi in Tripoli's Green Square. So much else happening around the region, though. We want to look at Iraq just now, where protests against corruption and a lack of basic services have turned deadly. At least 2 people killed in the northern city of Hawija, and in Baghdad, protesters squaring off against riot police. Tariq Basley with more.
The spirit of protest very much alive in Iraq. Despite the capital in virtual security lockdown, thousands took to the streets. Their day of rage inspired by recent events in North Africa.
Our demands is the following. First, prevent corruption by making laws to prevent that and apply it correctly for the favourite of the Iraqi people.
Soldiers searched protesters trying to enter Liberation Square. They barricaded a bridge leading to the city's so-called Green Zone government area. At one point, protesters threw stones at riot police, who forced them back against the wall. In the southern city Basra, around 3,000 also took to the streets to protest against corruption and a lack of basic services. Concrete slabs surrounding the Basra government building were knocked over. Clashes too with riot police in Mosul, where provincial government offices were set on fire. 8 years after the US-led invasion and the fall of Saddam Hussein, there's clear anger on the streets. Development has been slow to come to the country, and after recent events in the region, there are fears that anger could drive a broader call for change. Tariq Bazu, Al Jazeera.
So that was Iraq's Liberation Square. This is Cairo's Liberation Square. Tahrir Square, you may know it as, where Egyptians, even though you could say their revolution is technically over, they are still having to keep up pressure on their transitional government. Many thousands turning out in Liberation Square after Friday prayers. They want the military leaders to appoint a new cabinet and to lift the decades-old emergency rule. More from Azza Sukri.
Cairo's most famous square, once again filled with thousands of Egyptians. A month to the day since the tidal wave of protests swept President Hosni Mubarak from power, the calls for change have yet to die down. Officially, the gathering was to celebrate the success of the revolution. This amateur video showed street vendors and a generally calm atmosphere. But activists used it as an opportunity to maintain pressure on military rulers over promised reforms.
We're asking for the rest of the demands to be met, which is dismantle the state security investigations to have Shafi resign and to say no to the emergency law. Also to protect our right of demonstrations, our right to be in the streets.
They also called for Mubarak to be put on trial and the release of political prisoners. It was a clear reminder of the discontent sweeping through the Middle East. So many leaders now facing the wrath of their citizens. Azhar Sukri, Al Jazeera.
And it doesn't stop there this Friday in the Middle East. Yemen, hundreds of thousands of pro and anti-government activists staging rival rallies in the capital Sana'a. Thousands have also been marching against President Ali Abdullah Saleh in towns and cities across the country. Earlier, though, he did order the formation of a committee to open talks with protesters who are demanding he step down. From Sana'a, Hashim Al-Barra with more.
It was a show of force by both sides of Yemen's growing political divide. President Saleh's supporters turned out for their biggest rally so far. And according to a spokesperson, the president was ready for talks.
The President Saleh has ordered and instructed his police forces to step up the security and full protection of the protesters and demonstrations. But the government view that the dialogue is the key to a better future for the people of Yemen.
But it wasn't the message those calling for reform wanted to hear. Outside Sana'a University, one demonstrator explained.
And we are now passing the message to our president and to the world and to all Yemeni everywhere that we are requesting the change, the whole change. This president and his family, they have to leave, they have to give the right to the people.
The beleaguered president is relying on his supporters who live outside the capital, his security forces and his ruling party to counter the growing demands for his resignation. He's already promised he'll stand down in 2 years, but not until then. With both sides holding out, a sense of anxiety pervades the country. The capital, Sana'a, holds the key to President Saleh's survival. That's why he's so desperate to show the world such large demonstrations of support. But that's unlikely to change many minds here at such a critical moment in Yemen and beyond. Hashim Al-Barra, AlJazeera, Sana'a.
So while the unrest goes on around the Middle East, as we've been saying, this is our focus, of course, Libya, where it is most acute. Benghazi. Celebrations there. It almost looks like a party atmosphere, and hopefully this camera shot will widen out because we saw fireworks in the sky as well. Plus, maybe to the left of shot, you'll see our sister channel, AlJazeera Arabic, being projected on that building there. There it is, left hand of your screen as the fireworks go into the air. Such a big contrast to what we've heard about in Tripoli, people being fired on there. We spoke to a man on the phone who had to take refuge in someone's house when security forces then entered that house and took the phone off him. And now we've had Muammar Gaddafi even speaking in Tripoli. So it's a country of contrast at the moment, for sure. Celebratory atmosphere, it looks like, there in Benghazi as the fireworks go up into the night.